Hello there. Well, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half an hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with journalist and author Christina Patterson and deputy political editor of the Daily Mail, John Stevens. Very good evening to you both. So let's see what's on some of those front pages. Well, the Sunday Telegraph reports that the Prime Minister is declaring war on petrol stations that failed to meet the government's fuel duty cut. The Observer quotes MPs saying there is an identity crisis in the Conservative Party as a result of Partygate and U-turns. The Sunday Times has a claim that Downing Street figures lobbied Sue Gray to dilute her report on the parties and anonymise some of those involved. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on your screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we're joined tonight, just to remind you, by Christina Patterson and John Stevens. So let's kick off then with this on the front of the Observer. John, you pick it up. Johnson apparently is trashing Tory identity. Who's saying that?
Yes, this is one of the problems that you get when the Prime Minister is in a tricky position, is suddenly his backbenchers have a lot of power and start pulling them in different directions. And these are quotes from Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, who's obviously a former Tory leader himself, and he's complaining about the party's policies on tax and says that they've got an identity crisis when it comes to tax, because usually in the past, the Tories have gone into election after election saying, Labour are going to put up your taxes, we will keep them low. Whereas what we've seen in the last couple of months is national insurance go up under the Tories, which was a breach of the Tory manifesto from 2019. And so I think you're going to see a lot of this from people on the Tory backbenches over the next couple of months, saying, if you're going to stay in power, Boris Johnson, this is exactly what I want you to do.
And Christina, I mean, it seems that the criticism of Mr Johnson is not coming from just one quarter within the party, from all over the place.
Yes, but I have to say I find it quite funny that they call it an identity crisis. I mean, I think the crisis is rather bigger than that. We have a pathological liar at Downing Street who has been partying and breaking the laws that he set for the country throughout the whole pandemic. So, you know, it's not really an identity crisis, I think, the way that most of us are looking at it. But yes, and I think the reason that Tory MPs are finally speaking out against Boris Johnson is because they are now getting the whiff of losing their seats. And I have to say, it's extremely unseemly that what encourages them to speak out. It has been evident for a long, long time. The Partygate scandal has been rumbling on for months. It's been evident what's been going on in Downing Street. It was clear to many of us years ago that Boris Johnson was a pathological liar. But the fact that they can see now that his popularity is waning, that about 60% of the public think he should resign over Partygate, and that taxes are going up to record levels for many years, combined with the cost of living crisis. I think they now think they're going to lose their jobs. And that is the thing that's causing them to act. And it's a disgraceful reason to act. Well,
let's talk more about Partygate. Front of the Sunday Times, John. Gray diluted Party's report after pressure. This is an extraordinary story about the amount of influence that various people within Downing Street tried to put on Sue Gray to alter it.
Yeah, we know that ahead of the report being published, different chunks went to different people if they were named, so they could come back with the right reply. They had until last Sunday afternoon to say to Sue Gray whether they had some excuse or any reason why they didn't want to be named in the report. And we think that she contacted about 30 people saying that she was going to name them. When actually we got the report on Wednesday, there were only 15 names in there. And one of the allegations in the Sunday Times is that different bits were taken out. So the party, the night that Dominic Cummings left Downing Street, we know there's allegations that there was a party that took place in Boris Johnson's flat, with the claim was that there was ABBA music blasting out the windows, that everyone could hear it downstairs. And that's one of the details that didn't appear in the report. There's claims that in the draft it said there was music playing, and in the actual report there wasn't music playing. I think the tricky thing for Boris Johnson is he obviously hoped that they'd be able to get this report out there and then move on. And we're still seeing stories about it days later. And I guess the big thing that they would really be worried about is the possibility that this draft report, before it was watered down, somehow gets leaked in the next few weeks.
John, I mean, do you think that it is going to continue to dog the Prime Minister? I mean, the feeling was, particularly with that big giveaway by Rishi Sunak on Thursday, that, you know, they had got away with it and they were going to move on. You think there's still plenty more damage to be done?
Well, I think if you look at the last few days, in the immediate aftermath of that report coming out, it seemed like the Tory backbenchers were silent. But I think that was more that people were reserving judgment rather than they were all absolutely in support of Boris Johnson. And what you've seen since then has been a slow trickle of MPs coming out. And one of the things in the Sunday Times story is talking about is Parliament's in now recess, so we won't have the Commons for the next week. But there are people on the Tory side who are worried that we might end up with the 54 letters going in, which you'd need a no confidence vote in the Prime Minister. And one of the reasons they think there's a real possibility of that is because the rebels aren't organised. It's all different people who are unhappy for loads of different reasons. And I think we could end up getting to that 54 by accident.
OK, and Christina, we mentioned there's Sunak's big giveaway on Thursday. Now, there was one before that, not quite so big, but in it was a 5p cut in petrol duty, which didn't seem to get passed on. We got this on the front of the Telegraph. PM's war on rip-off petrol stations. He wants it passed on in full. What's he going to do about it?
He's going to fulminate in a way that makes a Telegraph front page so that they can give the impression that Boris Johnson is acting on behalf of the British people, because all the other news surrounding Boris Johnson is incredibly bad. And from the Telegraph's point of view, the windfall tax, which of course Rishi Sunak claimed isn't a windfall tax, is also bad news because it's a tax. And that gets back to the identity issue that the Tories party, which is meant to be the party of low taxation, has become a party of high taxation. I think what we're seeing is a Prime Minister who's flailing around, actually, desperate to come up with kind of tiny bits of kind of dead cats, basically, things that will take people's mind off Partygate. But as John said, it's not going to go away. And thank you, by the way, John, for your invitation to somebody to leak the draft report, the draft Sue Gray report, because we clearly do need to read it. And I have to say, as the daughter of a civil servant who would be turning his grave now about the way that Simon Case and Martin Reynolds and some of these other civil servants have behaved, I am absolutely horror-struck at the way the civil service has been infected by the corruption and law-breaking and lies that have apparently determined the new culture at number 10. I think the fact that civil servants actively tried to censor a report that was meant to be an independent report by another civil servant is absolutely disgraceful.
Sure, plenty of them not happy about it. Just noticing of these, there's kind of two stories on the Sunday Telegraph that join up. We've got this war on rip-off petrol stations. That's about passing on the fuel duty. But presumably the Prime Minister, John, wants them to start selling petrol in gallons again, because there's another story there about pounds and ounces being bought back.
Yeah, this is a story that the government in the coming days is going to set out proposed legislation for repealing laws that came into law when we were members of the EU, which means that you can't sell goods in imperial measurements. I mean, I can see, I'm the wrong person to discuss this story because I literally have no memory of any of these things. I just don't think there's going to be that many shops in a rush to bring back imperial measurements. But obviously, if you grew up with them, then fine, I'm sure a lot of people will be excited. But I'm not sure it's going to be a big change on the way.
That is the issue. Listen, stay with us. We're going to take a break because the Sunday Times reports that the police chiefs are at war over a race to lead the National Crime Agency, which has become embroiled in cronyism claims. We'll be looking at that next. Welcome back. You're watching the Press Preview. With me now, our journalist and author Christina Patterson and Deputy Political Editor with the Daily Mail, John Stevens. Right, I want to pick up on this story also on the front of The Observer, Christina, about Ukraine pleads for arms as key allies falter. Well, there does seem to be perhaps signs of a split in the support for Ukraine. Tell us about that and the need, of course, for some long-range weaponry.
Yes, well, it's a very, very worrying moment in the war. Obviously, the whole thing is incredibly worrying. Last night, in fact, our friends have taken in a Ukrainian mother and her child, and it brought it very close to home. Just what people have been living through. But essentially, Putin is destroying the whole of eastern Ukraine, and it looks as if he is kind of winning that in that part of Ukraine, if you can call destroying, razing an entire area to the ground, winning. And what's happened is that France and Germany have been trying to persuade Putin to negotiate, and we are being very gung-ho. Liz Truss has repeatedly called for Ukraine to not surrender even any land that it had already lost by 2014, like Crimea. I mean, basically, Liz Truss is more gung-ho than the Ukrainians, which is a little bit alarming. I don't think we should be asking for things the Ukrainians are not asking for. But I think there is a split now. And I think it's very, very difficult for anyone to know if you are dealing with somebody like Putin, who may or may not be mad, but is clearly extremely determined to do whatever it takes to get some kind of victory in Ukraine at a terrible price. It's very hard to know what approach to take. And I think we should be giving more weapons to Ukraine. But the fear is that long-range weapons might be used in Russia, which, of course, targeted to Russian territory, which could, of course, cause a major escalation in the war and involve NATO. So it's very, very frightening territory and hard to know what the right thing is to do.
Indeed. Let's get back to domestic issues. John, this also on the front page of the Sunday Times, an extraordinary row taking place amongst the top brass, as they put it, involved in the police. This is over the role to lead the National Crime Agency, and it's between Neil Basu and Lord Hogan Howe. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so one of the things that has wound people up is there are claims that Boris Johnson has demanded that Lord Hogan Howe, who is an ally of his, who used to run the Met, I think when he was London Mayor, he's demanded that he's been considered for this new top job as head of the NCA. And this has put people's noses out joint. They say that when he was head of the Met, that he mucked up the investigation into VIP paedophiles. Remember when they looked at whether politicians had been involved in child grooming gangs. And so these are some quotes from Neil Basu, who is currently an assistant commissioner at the Metropolitan Police. He's the most senior non-white police officer in the country. He was in the running. It seems he's been told he's no longer in the running. And he is demanding an explanation for why he's no longer being considered for this job.
Another domestic story on the front of the Telegraph, Christina, and this, I suppose, goes along. So many things seem to be grinding to a halt, as the Telegraph puts it. We've got passports, haven't we? And now it's driving tests. Learners face being unable to book a test until 2023 because of a crisis at the DVSA.
Yes, this is, I mean, as you say, everything seems to be. Passports are a complete nightmare. Masses of people are unable to go on holiday because they can't get their passports in time. And now people aren't able to get driving tests for many, many weeks. And there is a talk in some cities that there won't be any slots available until the end of the year or even next year. Interestingly, the government has said that nobody should be waiting more than 14 weeks, but then failed to come up with any numbers to back this up, which seems to be a rather consistent government line. I must say, if you're 17 and raring to pass your driving test, then it is, you know, it's tough. I remember I passed my driving test a week before my 18th birthday and then promptly crashed the car as soon as I passed
Oh,
it,
dear.
which was a kind of salutary lesson in you know, using a bit of caution in driving. But no, I mean, I don't know exactly what's causing all these delays, but it's really not good, and I don't see why they're so hard to solve.
Yeah, we hear talk of people scouring the United Kingdom for places where there isn't such a queue and being prepared to travel many, many miles to take their tests. John, I think we'll squeeze the last one in. Lovely story, front of the Observer, a picture of the finishing touches of soldiers on parade in London for the Jubilee, of course.
Yeah, this is everyone getting ready for the end of the week, the long bank holiday. I think most people are off work Thursday and Friday. And this is soldiers rehearsing for Trooping the Colour, which will take place on Thursday. There's that picture. One of the front pages, they've got a picture of Prince William with his bearskin hat, and it appears to be setting off some sort of allergy. Looks like he's slightly uncomfortable. But yeah, I think a lot of people are looking forward to the end of the week and celebrating a truly magnificent woman.